kicking back and doing Shabbos the way it was meant to be done. If you'd like to join us, take a load off and put your feet up. No need to put your name on the wait list. You're already a VIP. Oh, and you might want to hold on to your jacket. It's pretty chill in here.
All right. Welcome to episode number 7. This is Matt and this is
Jose. What's up, guys?
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Shabbat Lounge. We ask that you would please subscribe, comment, like, share on social media, and help us get the word out. Well, today we're going to continue our journey. The last time we've kind of been talking about what does it mean to walk out in Torah, what does that mean? And we wanted to kind of start talking about how have you changed? And that's kind of what the question we're asking ourselves is how have we changed? And Jose and I have been talking kind of about food, and one of the first things that we talked about, because we like to eat, is when you start studying the Torah and the scriptures and understanding them with a new vision, you start to look at things like this clean and unclean animal thing, and you start going, oh, I'm not supposed to eat pork. I'm not supposed to eat shrimp. And so, Jose, what's it been like for you when you've told people, maybe family members, or you've gone out to eat, share your struggle.
Right. So, this is how we apply what we learn, right? And, people can look at this and say, well, we don't have to follow that. And it's the Old Testament, right? And we talked about that earlier. But what does it mean to us and in our faith and my walk, basically as myself and my family? What have we changed? And food's a big deal. I mean, you got to have it to survive, right? You can't.
I like to eat a couple times a day.
Yeah, minimum probably 3. But so it's like when you go on vacation, or you're just going to the grocery store, or you go into. It's like for example today, right? So we got together. It was about 11 when we got together today, right?
Close.
Yeah, close. And I said, "Hey, Matt, you got anything to eat?" And you're like, "No, I would have put something together for you." I said, "Oh, it's okay. Let me go to the fast food restaurant down the road, and I'll get me some breakfast." So I went over there, and I looked at the menu. I was like, "Man, everything has pork. It's like bacon, sausage, more bacon and more sausage." And then I asked them, I was like, "Man, what else you guys got? You guys got anything with steak?" She goes, "Oh yeah, we do. I think we got some. I think we got one left." I said, "Okay, can you check?" Sure enough, man, we had a steak, a little sandwich, and so I came back and I said, "Hey, man, I had a steak and my little sandwich with egg and cheese." So. Sometimes people look at you different when you ask for something that doesn't have bacon or sausage, and
we talked about how just everywhere you go, you talked about some commercial for dogs. What was that? And you said there's bacon all over this commercial.
You see that little dog? It's like we have a dog. Her name's Bella, and you give her treats. So we give her steak treats. It's fake steak, but it's not bacon.
Right.
so but it reminds me of the commercial, and the dog goes bacon, bacon, bacon. He's running through all the house going bacon, bacon, bacon. And when you really look around here, so if you go to a restaurant, you can't get away from bread, and you can't get away from pork items, and if you look at the manufacturing of food, there's a lot of stuff that has pork, like gelatin, has pork items in it, and we're like, whoa, marshmallows, pork items in it. It's almost like a conspiracy.
Right, and it's hard when you go to someone's house even, and especially when you have kids. And I can remember the first time when we started walking in this, we went to good friends we've had for a long time, friends we still have today, and they're serving something pork. And I believe it was Micah. Micah's like, I can't eat pork. And, but he was only, like 10, 11 years old, and he was able to understand that he wasn't supposed to do that, and he was willing to say, I'm not willing. And that family honored that, But it is kind of weird for them, and it puts you in that situation. Do I just eat this and go along with it and risk not offending them, or do I just say? And I think sometimes I've kind of taken the standpoint of just to be honest, because I think if too many people are fake and too many people aren't don't show who they really are. And if I'm not honest with you, then you might continue to serve me pork all the time forever, and then one day you would be mad at me. If
you don't like pork?
Yeah, you've been eating it for years.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
My son sometimes tells me, "Do you know me?" Mm-hmm. But so yeah, along those lines. Okay, so let's be honest, right? So we didn't just now. I mean, we used to. My family, we used to eat pork. Okay, but again, going back to what we said the last episode is. Are you applying what you learn through your research, and are you following what your Elohim, Yahuwah, is asking you to do, or are you following man's traditions, right? So the pork thing is such a big deal to us. Now, can we eat pork? No, I mean you can eat it. You can physically put it in your mouth and chew on it and digest it, right? I mean, when you look at the pork products and so forth, there is known to have a lot of parasites and stuff. You got to cook it really good to kill the parasites, and so that should give you a hint of how bad this product is. However, you can eat it if you want to. We choose not to eat it. Okay, and there's a difference, right?
Yeah, and I think too, go back and look at creation and look at these clean and unclean and think about the purpose, so it comes back to, and we wanted to get into, who is Yahweh, and what is he about, and if you look at the original creation, if you believe he created everything, he knew and he created those pigs for a purpose. Mm-hmm. And they're the garbage disposals. They're the cleanup crew, just like the buzzards. We had a snake try to get in a chicken coop, and we killed it the other day. And the next day, the buzzards are out cleaning up the mess. It stunk for a couple of days, and then it's just gone because they did their job as the sanitation department, and the pigs were the cleanup crew. And so if he designed it and he created these things and he said, hey, don't eat it, I have to go, okay, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah. So, so we started in this walk, trying to, it's been changing our lives totally, right? So, the food thing is a big deal, like we said earlier. I mean, you have to have it to survive, right? And so once you get to that point where you realize, okay, you're not supposed to eat certain foods, now the decision you have to make to yourself is, do I want to follow what Yahuwah says, or do I want to follow what man says? And or do I believe what the interpretations of what Scripture says from people that don't even believe in the Old Testament, and only believe that the New Testament is the way to go? So for us, my walk has I've been convicted in my spirit and the set apart spirit that I have in me, living in me, to avoid certain foods. Okay, now. Am I going to judge somebody sitting next to me for having a cheeseburger? No. With bacon? No. It's not for me to judge that person. This is an individual walk. Mm-hmm. Okay? Because I told you I didn't want to use a term at the end of the day, so I'm going to say it at first sunrise.
Right, first sunrise.
First sunrise, you're going to have to answer not to me, not to your spouse, not to your friend, not to your neighbor. You're going to have to answer to Yahuwah, okay? And he's going to ask you, did you follow my commandments? If you love me, follow my commandments, what I remember Yahushua says. Now, Yahushua, like we said, at the last episode, he quoted the scriptures, which is known as the Torah, all the prophets, and the Psalms. This is what he was quoting. He was not quoting New Testament people.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a salvation issue, but I think it comes back to blessing and curses. I think if you choose this way, we are going to be healthier, mm-hmm. have less diseases, have less problems, because literally, I think somewhere along the line, we separated the fact and we lost sight of, he created these, especially like pork and shrimp. He created them from the very beginning to be the cleanup crew. Mm-hmm. They're bottom dwellers. They eat the junk no one else will eat. They'll eat the rotten food. They'll eat just nasty stuff. Mm-hmm. That's what they're designed to do. And so you have to go, if they eat nasty stuff, that's got to affect their meat.
Let me elaborate on that nasty stuff, because In some countries, when somebody goes to the restroom and you defecate, guess what's picking and eating that stuff up is the pigs. Okay.
That's gross.
Pigs will eat anything and everything, and then in the bottom crawlers, they're eating all the feces from all these animals that are floating everywhere, and then they're eating it, and it's affecting their body, and then you're eating that body, that whatever, you know.
And I think there literally does it. It is gross.
Chills, man.
It is gross.
Just thinking about it. You know, there's a YouTube video. We talked about YouTube last time. I mean, it's a perfect tool, right? There's a YouTube video that talks about worms found in pigs. And when you look at those worms in those pigs' bellies, and this is why you got to cook the meat so high and for so long. Oh, I dare you to watch that video and still eat a pork chop after that.
Yeah, some of that stuff's really gross.
So anyways.
And I think, too, I feel like I need to jump into this. I think this clean and unclean thing is more than just this surface level of don't eat pork. I think it's a reflection of us and a reflection of people. And so many people are willing to consume garbage. And what do I mean by garbage? They just fill their minds up. So many people are more worried about, does my Xbox work? Does my Netflix work today? Than they are spiritual things. Mm-hmm. And so many, so if you want to get someone's attention really fast, all you'd have to do is cut the power to their house. And man, you got them up, they're looking around, they're like, what's going on,
Yeah.
So that's really the fastest way to get people's attention. In our society, everything is connected. We're so distracted, and I think this eating pork and eating unclean animals is a reflection of people. And he's telling us, don't be like those pigs. Don't be like the pigs that waller in the filth and consume this gross, this bad garbage and expect to produce something clean. I think that's kind of the point to it.
Yeah, so, when you really think about it, is we've been given some instructions. We talk about the Torah. And when Yahuwah was telling us, and let me give you the scripture in Leviticus, for example. Leviticus, it tells us the different animals you're not supposed to eat and stuff. It says you must never eat rabbits. You must never eat pigs.
By the way, with rabbits, I believe they eat their own poo. So I think that's how they digest their food.
And by the way, they don't lay eggs. They lay poop.
Yes. No eggs.
And they're chocolate in color.
Yeah, they're chocolate. Chocolate eggs.
Yeah, chocolate eggs. So it says, never eat the meat of these animals or touch their dead bodies. They are unclean to you. So am I going to follow Yahuwah's word, or am I going to follow man's word? And we just made a decision. Like we said, this is our walk. This is our decision to do, and we're just sharing it with you to kind of give you some inspiration, maybe some advice, and maybe some encouragement that people are out there facing the same things you do. And and one of the main reasons, because some of these animals don't chew the cud. I don't know if you guys ever heard that, but let me read you the definition. So, the cud is a portion of the food that returns from a ruminant's stomach to the mouth to be chewed for the second time. More accurately, it's a bolus of semi-degraded food regurgitated from the rectularium of the. I even can't say that word. Cud is produced during a physical digestive process of rumination. So
yeah. So basically,
okay. Yeah, he's my teacher.
We have sheep.
Yeah.
And so we see an example of this all the time. And we had a sheep that got real sick this week, a baby lamb, about 11 days old, almost died on us. And we had to scoop it up and baby it for a couple of days here and give it an IV, take it to the vet and spend some money on it. And it had a twin, and the twin was at 11 days was already chewing its cud. And so we knew that it was healthy and able to eat more than just its mama's milk. And we could feed it hay And so basically, what sheep do and cattle, they fall in that category of rumen. Some people used to say they have multiple stomachs, which is not necessarily true. They just digest their food really well. And so that's one of the big differences in these animals. Remember, he made them. He knew how they were made. He put them together.
And the purpose.
And he said these rumen animals, because technically a rabbit is a rumen too, but it's a little different when you eat your own poo, and that's part of your digestive process. But he knew that these animals really processed their food, and multiple times like that, and that's what makes it clean, I believe. And where the pig, its digestive system is very quick, and things just go through it. I know that's gross, but it doesn't spend time in its body to process those toxins and to get it out. It just literally, many of those toxins and those pollutants go right into the pig's muscles and its tissues all through its body.
Yeah, and then it's basically adds to its flavor, right?
The flavor.
So when people are eating, it's like when I loved a cheeseburger with bacon. Okay, I used to love those.
Oh yeah, me too.
It's like, you remember the Baconator? Yeah, I used to have those. I think those from a hamburger spot here, like Wendy's. I think is who sells that, right? And then so I always had sandwiches with bacon because I love bacon. But so I had to give that up after I read Scripture and said, okay, am I going to follow what Scripture says, or am I going to follow what I want to do, or what society says that's good? I'd rather follow the Scripture. And that's a decision we made all together as a family. And we talked about how we met. With Chris, my youngest, and he's the one who you saw how he was, interpreting what we were teaching him in regards to the kind of food that we eat and how we live. And I'm always asking him, it's like, is this the example that I set for you? So I'm the father telling my son, is this the example that I set for you?
And I think both of our boys were a demonstration of acting out what they saw from their fathers.
Right.
And which is the way it's supposed to work. They are our representation, and and that was very pleasing to both of us to see that our children would be willing to stand up.
Oh man, you just said something amazing. Okay, amazing. You said that they were living out the representation, right? And it pleased you, right? And you were pleased to see that they've actually learned and apply what you're teaching them.
Right.
Okay.
It wasn't lip service.
Exactly. Think about our Abba Father, our Elohim, Yahuwah. Here he is giving us instructions, which is the Torah, of how we supposed to live, right? And how we're supposed to engage with people. And how we're basically the instructions for our lives. And here we are implementing what we've been taught. And I'm sure our Abba Father is like, oh wow, check these two guys out. They're actually following what I've told them to do. I'm pleased with that. And as an earthly father of kids, I am so happy when I see them doing the right things, right? And I think our Father in heaven, our Yahuwah, is saying the same thing when people do what He's been instructing us to do. That's such a good feeling, and it's a blessing.
Yeah, and kind of going back to what we talked about in our last episode, going to church, punching your time clock over and over is kind of just giving him lip service. And it's just kind of like, yeah, I believe you are what you, I believe this. But when we talk about living out Torah, those boys and what we're talking about, that's how you do it. They stood up for what they believed in, and they did it. It wasn't lip service; it was their actions, And I think that's what he's looking for from us. I think he looks down, and even though we may not have his name right, and maybe it's Yahweh, Yahuwah, I don't want to get caught up in, we don't want to get caught up in what you call him, but basically, I don't want to use Lord and God because I believe that wasn't his name. Now, how do we pronounce it? I think there's some debate in this community about that, but I don't want to be focused on that because I think ultimately he looks down and he goes, hey, my kids are trying. To say this and do this right.
Mm-hmm. I agree on you about that specific aspect of how he feels about our making the effort, but I think it's important to also to do that line in the sand, basically,
sure.
Right? So once you learn, and you understand what his real name is, then we wouldn't call him, any other name besides what his name is.
Right, and like the difference between Yahweh and Yahuwah, that's just a pronunciation thing.
Well, it's also different Hebrew because
different.
Yahuwah is the Paleo Hebrew, which is basically the original Hebrew, and then Yahweh is the modern Hebrew.
Yes.
Right? So. In essence, is the same, but it's just different pronunciation.
And we really want you to go research that. See if what we're talking about is accurate. But go research where the word Lord comes from, where God comes from, where even Jesus, where those names come from. And
we're just giving you our understanding.
Right.
And from our experience. Mm-hmm. And it's just. Why would you want to reinvent the wheel sometimes?
Exactly. And I think, we kind of seem to crush over to this different topic for a minute. But, that's the way this life is, isn't it? I mean, it's messy. Everything is mashed together. And we talked about compartmentalizing last time. It's not compartmentalized. It's kind of messy. It's just all together. And you really can't talk about one without talking about other things, But we do know he was very specific in these commandments. And I think at some point in our conversation, we will have to talk about Peter's vision, and about that. And so, kind of, if you're ready for that, I would kind of, can you maybe say something about that? So I'm going to give you, before we do that, I kind of want to read what it says here. And this is in Acts 10, and 9 through 16 or so, and this it's called Peter's vision, and I guess I'm reading now the NIV here. It says, about noon the following day, as they were on their journey and approaching the city, Peter went up on the roof to pray. He became hungry and wanted something to eat. And while the meal was being prepared, he fell into a trance, and he saw heaven open and something like a large sheet being let down to earth by its four corners. It contained all kinds of four-footed animals as well as reptiles and birds. Then a voice told him, "Get up, Peter, kill and eat." And he replies, "Surely not. I have never eaten anything impure or unclean in my life." Okay, so, and then in the 15 he says, "Don't call anything impure that I have made." So, that translation, that's everybody's go-to.
So
that's the go-to place. If I'm going to argue this is where I'm going.
Okay, so tell me where is actually described these animals that he sees, because he sees all four-legged animals. He sees the birds and the reptiles and all this stuff, right? He sees them all, but where is that? Okay, because you got to remember, everything that's in what we would call the New Testament is also identified in the Old Testament, right? So where is that in the Old Testament? Well, that's exactly what I was reading earlier. That's in Leviticus, okay, where he says, don't eat these unclean animals and clean animals. So when you really put that two together, he's telling you, these are the animals that you can eat, these are the animals you can't eat. Don't call anything that I've called clean unclean.
Don't go against my word.
Don't go against my word. So if we're just understanding it from our new perspective, known as the New Testament, not going back to what the Old Testament says about these unclean and clean animals, then yes, you can interpret that any way you want. Mm-hmm. But that's the problem with today's interpretations. Because they don't go back and tell us what was it said about these animals. If you go back and reference those animals, it says don't eat these. Don't eat rabbits, don't eat pigs, don't eat anything that crawls on its belly, and so forth. don't call anything that you call clean unclean. So then he talks about the clean animals which we're allowed to eat. Mm-hmm. So it's all about the interpretation. And this goes back to what I was telling you when I was through seminary. All we heard was other people's interpretation, not really what Scripture says about how we should interpret that particular Scripture.
Right, and don't you think it has something in the Scripture? And Peter, he understood that my mother-in-law used to say non-food, and that's basically how they viewed these unclean animals. They weren't food. It's like talking about a piece of paper. To them, it's like you wouldn't eat paper.
Hey,
Why would you eat paper? That's not even food.
Hey, I just got it, man. I just got it. So this is what Yahuwah just put in my mind. Okay, so in the Torah, in Leviticus, he was giving them line by line bullet item. Boom, 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 right. What he did there for Peter was actually give him a PowerPoint presentation. He said, here's my sheet, and then let's put the projector on. These are the clean and unclean animals. Don't call anything clean unclean. Boom. Mm-hmm. Why did he do that? Because Peter, being Hebrew Jewish, he said it himself in that interpretation, says, I have never eaten anything that's unclean.
Right. It was kind of offensive to him.
Exactly.
It's like, whoa.
So he reaffirmed the fact that he follows Torah. Mm-hmm. And so he says, don't call anything that I call clean unclean. Well, he doesn't have to elaborate on it. Why? Because he already knows what Yahuwah called clean and what Yahuwah called unclean. Mm-hmm. However, if we don't know that reference point, then we can interpret that as everything on that sheet is clean.
Exactly. But I also think it's something that gets missed in this Scripture, and which I missed forever. I'm telling you, it took me a long time to wrap my mind around this, because I knew this Scripture well, because I focused a lot on the New Testament from my tradition. And I felt like I understood it pretty well, but I think what I lost the meaning of and what he was saying is this Jewish culture at the time. If you remember, what did he say to the Samaritan woman? What did he,
Which one? Was that the one that was following him and she wanted to heal her daughter?
Right.
Oh, he called her a dog.
Exactly, and so they definitely called them derogatory terms.
Okay, so let's clarify.
People would be very offended.
Who called who a dog? Yahushua, Jesus, called that woman a dog. He says, "I did not come for you." Mm-hmm. He came for who?
The lost sheep.
The lost sheep of Israel. Mm-hmm. Okay, so. Again, you got to remember the connotation and the concept behind what he's talking about, because otherwise you're never going to understand it.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's very critical.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, but I think that.
Was that what you're referencing?
Yes, I think that's kind of where I'm going with it, for sure. But when you see this, I think he's talking about and trying to convey to him. I think that was a cultural understanding at the time. I think that the Jews of that day very much did look down upon the Gentiles. Anybody that they called Gentile, they didn't see them maybe as human or as good or as qualified as they were. And so that was kind of the cultural understanding. And I think this vision is about Peter understanding that that this term, this unclean, kind of had been applied to for lack of a better term, the non-Jewish people, and that the Father didn't call them unclean. He didn't call them unclean like he did this meat.
Right.
And he's showing him this vision, trying to make this point of, look, I want you to go to these people. I want you to go and do this and minister to them, and so it was kind of a very, very much a mind shift. And just like you said, it was like a PowerPoint. It was a visual demonstration that he could really wrap his mind around, because they did call the Gentiles, unclean things. You weren't supposed to associate with them, be with them, and he's saying, I want you to go talk to them.
Right. And
that was very, very different from what they had been thinking at the time, I believe.
Well, I think so too. But I think in reference to, if we read it in context, he's talking about, hey, Peter, if you're hungry, eat. And he says, I do not eat this particular foods, right? Mm-hmm. So, but Peter already knew because of his understanding of Torah. Okay.
Well, okay, and in 28 he said, and I'm reading out the NOG, I switch versions, but usually it translates God into Yahuwah or Yahweh, but Yahuwah has shown me that I should no longer call anyone impure unclean. So I do believe that this is pretty relevant here, that from looking at that scripture, I do believe that he was calling certain people clean and certain people unclean, and that's the whole purpose of that vision. So I think what people want to do with this is what you're saying. They want to take it out of context. They want to say, now he is saying. You remember all that stuff I talked about in the Old Testament that you couldn't eat this stuff? Well, there's a new sheriff in town and things are different.
Pretty chill in here.
Please send us questions or suggestions for future shows at Yeshua1600@gmail.com. You can follow my WordPress account at itsyahushua.wordpress.com. And we also have a Twitter account that's Sabbath Lounge. Please follow, share on social media. Thank you.